All right. Well, look, let's just jump in right at the beginning, Selma, and tell me, what were you born into? How did life start out for you? What was the world looking like when you were born into it? As in, for you
Well, it was
personally, what was it looking like?
yeah. Let's see. It was like 1976, so it was a while ago. Um, well, I was born into a mixed race family in Birmingham in Sutton Coldfield, in the UK, which was unusual. There wasn't many families that looked like mine in the neighbourhood to have a white parent and a Pakistani parent. And I was the youngest of three, so I'm a girl, and I have two older brothers.
How much older are the
Um,
brothers?
Quite a bit older. They're like 6 and 9 years older
Okay.
than me. So
So,
sometimes it feels like you're like an only child. Because by the time I'm like 9 or 12, they've both left home, of course.
wow. And they were two boys, so you were the girl, the
Hmm.
baby girl.
Yeah, exactly. Baby girl in a Muslim family. And that's also like another layer of complexity, because in terms of it felt to me like there was a lot more rules about the way that girls live their life versus the way that boys, or seemingly my brothers, and the way that my father translated those religious rules into our household. It felt different being a girl.
So say a bit more about your parents. You said it was unusual. Muslim, Muslim father,
Father, Muslim father. Yeah, Pakistani. Well, he was
Pakistani father, and English mother.
mother. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, he was born in India, but when, of course, the British
yeah.
separated India and Pakistan, and the Muslims moved to Pakistan. So I think he was about three when that happened or something. He was pretty young
Really
when his
interesting.
family had to migrate. Migrate feels like a very polite word because some of the experiences that he shared were not polite, and he's got like huge. He used to have huge scars across his legs from that journey. So I think it's funny. Even sometimes, if I look at a map of Pakistan and India, they're huge, huge countries. And so then to think of people on foot leaving one and taking their family and up sticks to another, um, it just feels like a big thing. So I call him Pakistani. I think he would have called himself that, but he was actually born in India.
So he was three at the time of partition.
Yeah, I think so. We didn't talk about it too much because he was so young and he was separated from his family during that time. I think it was fairly traumatic for him. He talks about like a nice story where he got lost. He was separated from his family, and his mom at some point went back to go and find him, and there she found her baby in a hospital being cared for. But like I said, it's sort of very much glossed over in our family, like so I don't know whether he didn't remember it and so didn't talk about it, or didn't talk about it for other reasons. And he's died a few years ago. So there's
Mm.
not many opportunities to talk about that. But you can only imagine it a little bit, like I said, that even if you look at the physicality, the geography of that land, to even imagine what that journey would have been like on foot. I can't imagine.
How did he get the scars on his legs from the journey?
I think there was soldiers along the route making sure that the people were going to the right country, that like, because there would have been people in Pakistan needing to relocate to India and Indians relocating to Pakistan. So that would have been a huge logistical thing. So there were soldiers along that route.
So just recently we had Dev Kumar as a guest, and he's in life sciences, and he was relating a very similar experience for his father,
Mm,
and
right.
and again, slightly kind of this story's lost in history. His father passed
Yeah,
away not that long ago, and they never really interrogated the backstory.
exactly.
But one can only imagine the trauma in the family that must happen when you're going through that kind of dislocation. And I mean, I
Yeah.
can't really imagine really what it would have been
You
like.
can't, and because I mean, luckily or not luckily, but with news reporting nowadays, you sort of see the impacts of war in other places and where people are migrating and moving. And you start trying to send your mind back to those early 50s, like, were there cars then? You're sort of like, how were physically people moving their stuff, with their suitcases? Probably not. I guess we're all in bags. I don't know. Do you bother? Like, what are those actual essentials that you take on such a journey? And he was one of 13 children. So as well, for his parents, there would have been a lot of humans in that little, in their own little bundle to take safely from one land to another. And his mother had her first child at 13 herself. So she was not much older than her oldest daughter,
Yeah, that's extraordinary. So then what happened for him? He then grows up in what's then Pakistan, and
he grows up in Pakistan. I think he's quite a naughty child, rebel child. And he, again, lots of this story lost. My father was quite the storyteller, so sometimes many exaggerations. It was very difficult to tell which bits or not were true. But at some point he leaves home. He runs away from home when he was 16 to 18, I'm going to say. And he decides he wants to head to America. But it, again, is sort of on foot. So he's joining a few various workforces / armies along the way, and somehow
literally on foot from Pakistan. He's heading west.
Exactly. But then there's boats, and he joins various. It's a thing to get across the world, and he lands on the shores of Britain, thinking it is America actually. And a taxi driver, he gets into a taxi, and tells a taxi driver to take him somewhere, and a taxi driver drives him from the south coast to Birmingham, and then promptly tries to charge him a lot of money, of which he has none.
Did he have a contact in Birmingham or something, or did he just
No, he didn't know anybody. And the taxi driver,
was it literally the taxi driver said Birmingham's a good place to go?
He's probably thinking, where are there a lot of Pakistani people? Right. Birmingham. And so it's the days of no dogs, no blacks, no Irish, like those are the signs on restaurants and cafes and bars and places.
So what year are we, do you think?
We are 64, 63, 64, something like that.
Yeah.
Around then, maybe even a little bit earlier, maybe. He meets my mom in 65. So it must be before then, because they meet at nursing school. But this taxi driver drops him off outside an Irish pub, because of course Irish were also on those bottom rungs of the hierarchical scale. Yeah. And when my dad doesn't have any money, he proceeds to beat him up outside. And then the Irish people come from outside the pub and beat the taxi driver up and sort of take my father in, So that was his entry. That was his welcome to Britain.
Wow, that is quite a story, actually, isn't it? That's an epic story.
Yeah. And like I said, there would have been a lot in between.
Yeah.
But again, it's funny because sometimes we find snippets of stories from other people that he met along the way or knew, but they seem to come out more now in later life, because there's a lot of shame or things that you do in a desperate situation to earn money or passage that you don't necessarily want to share with your family or talk about. And so it's sort of, little snippets of stories, and it is very little snippets. So, and he would always try to tell most of the stories with a lot of good humor. So it makes me feel like there's so much that we didn't know, because to make that journey with no money, well, you've got to do something.
You've got to hustle. You've got to, I was talking with a good friend not that long ago who was describing who's been phenomenally successful in their life, but how there was a time when they would shoplift because that was literally how they could feed themselves and their child.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, this is someone who's extremely generous and charitable,
Yeah.
now that they're successful, but needs must, right?
Exactly. And I don't think they're necessarily the stories that you choose to share with your children.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm a child, so he may well have told more to friends
Mm.
or other people in your life. But I think what you choose to share with your children, because you're probably also trying to raise them in a, like to be the best people or do good things. So little was shared with us that sometimes that is a real sad. All those stories are lost, or they're lost to me. Perhaps they sit with somebody else.
How long ago did your father die?
2021. So we're about 4 years ago, give or take. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think it wouldn't surprise me if more of those come out over time, as that generation from the partition, because they must all be passing away ish.
Well, what about all his siblings? Because he had 15
Well,
siblings.
he had loads, 13. He was one of 13, so he had a lot of siblings. But it was also, so I was born into a time as well in those days where it wasn't seen as a good thing to have a second language. So it was really seen to stunt your growth if your children had more than just English under their belt. So parents were really discouraged from teaching their native language to their children so as not to impact their education. The problem that had is that then it makes it extremely difficult to communicate with the family. So he was here and his family were in Pakistan, all of them. And it wasn't in the days where everybody spoke English. It wasn't in the days of like television going all around the world and YouTube and, lots. And I've lived in quite a lot of countries around the world. I'm always amazed at how amazingly people speak English. And then you discover how invaluable television and YouTube has been to just the general English language, not because it's taught, but because you pick it up, by watching, listening. And so this was really in the days before that. So I honestly had almost zero connection with his family. I mean, I went to Pakistan 3 times in my life. And also because they were Muslims, often you'd be sat, me and my mom would be in one room and my dad would be in another. So you would just sit and smile and sit on the floor for 2 weeks and nod and, let everybody touch you. So my skin is a lighter color and my hair's a lighter color and you look so very different. So for them, I look really white. Of course, in Britain, I look really Pakistani. But so you just spend a lot of time smiling and sort of lapping. It's quite a shock as well. In those days, I guess I first went in, if I was 5, so 1981. And just the shock of the difference, the smells, the way people lived, that the kitchen stove is on the floor. It's not, they called it a stand-up kitchen if they ever knew anyone with a stand-up kitchen, but otherwise the cooking stove is on the floor and the toilets are in the floor and, there's chickens in your bedroom and, so things are so shockingly different when you're a child and then you don't speak the language. Most of those experiences for me, if I look back on them, of course, I didn't have any kind of maturity to take it in a good way. I think I just was like traumatized of like, who are these people and why do they keep touching me? And they all look very happy, but I have no clue what's going on. It was sort of that. And you go to the market and they would chop off a chicken's head in front of you because then it's fresh meat. You can imagine, my experience is going to whatever. What was it back in the day? Carrefour was what was our local supermarket. So you can imagine all of those little things are like, what is going on? What is going on here?
Was it very meaningful for your father to return to Pakistan and be with his family?
Yeah, I think he left as well. And like if you run away from home, that's the thing, right? And it's not in the days where there's easy communication. So I think the first time he got back in touch with his parents was when he was married and with a child. So I don't know how many years were between those events, but it's likely significant number of years. And then he goes back with a sort of, it was really important to send money back to his family. So if our family ever got any money, he would always send a large proportion back home. So those were the kind of things that were seen as valued from the family, was you show up and you give money. And like I said, I only went every 5 years, and he was the same. My parents, one was a social worker and my mum ran day nurseries, both working for the local government. So it's not like we're not up from money.
Did that continue throughout his life, do you know, your father? Or was there a point where his parents passed away and so then the duty was fulfilled to the family, or did that continue? Do you know?
Well, my parents divorced when I was about 20, and then he remarried. And he did go back to Pakistan for a while at some point to live, not for too long, I think like 5 years, maybe a bit longer. There's always that sort of yearning for people that leave home to go back home. Of course, I'm also now part of that group of people. I'm British, you can hear from my voice, but I live in the Netherlands. Yeah. And you do often have that sense of, should I return home, wherever you feel like that is, and do you go back? And he did go back. And then, of course, felt really out of place, and then returned. And then returned to the UK. I mean, I've only left for when did I leave? 2009. So 15 years, something like that. Yeah. But I already, my language is already out of touch. The language moves on so quickly at home, and my slang is all very 2009, which makes my friends laugh. But if you've gone for even longer, 30 or 40 years, then you almost sound like Shakespearean, whatever the equivalent of that is in your culture when you come back. So all of those, and he wasn't really speaking Urdu, was his native language. And like I said, we didn't speak it at home at all, not one word. He never taught any of us. So I think it was definitely a big presence in our lives, even though that's his story that I've shared. But being something other, or being from an outside, you're aware of that very much because you're presented with those differences all the time. So whether it was visiting the mosque and not speaking the language, so not being able to appreciate anything, like a lot of religion is shared through storytelling. So if you can't understand the stories, then...
And that would be visiting the mosque in Birmingham?
Yeah, that would be, yeah. And we were also from a minority Islamic faith. It was Shia Muslim, so it's also a minority in a minority. So it's not like the big mosques. Yeah. It's like it's basically a house. It's people's converted homes that you'd go to. And then, so if you can't pick up a culture through the storytelling, then it's really hard to pick up a culture. And so there was we would be other in every situation. So in the mosque setting, we were outsiders because my mom was like maybe one of 2 English women in the entire mosque. So there you're very much the odd one out. And in our community. So
did she convert, or what was she Christian? Was she kind of active in her faith and then converted, or sort of fairly passive in her faith, or no faith?
Yeah, I think my mom she definitely believes in God. I mean, now she goes to the church. Now she's Christian again. But I think my mom has just always believed in God. But she's never, I don't know, I feel like I'm speaking for her. I've never really seen her like reading from a Bible or reading from a Quran or something, like that. She just has a general faith in God. And she loves the community of of church or of the mosque. So she always enjoyed, and now she enjoys going to church.
Yeah.
So we go along at Christmas. You know, I love to sing. So we go along at Christmas and I love to sing. Religion has a funny place in my heart because of the division. Like I said, growing up Muslim, if you're a girl, and especially like a Shia Muslim, can be really, well, I found it really confronting. And the practice of the religion just felt so restrictive to me. And it made me feel like it was only a divisive way to live. So my relationship with religion feels different to what somebody's relationship could be with faith or spirituality. But I don't feel like that's something that I dig too deeply into, really.
Yeah.
She converted.
So if we go back to your dad arrives in the UK, he's just done this epic journey. I mean, what incredible, he's young, incredible resilience to get that far. He pitches up in Birmingham, and not that long after that, he's marrying your mum. So what happens? How does he get a foothold in Birmingham, and how do they end up both at nursing?
There's definitely some sort of gypsy Romany stories involved there, and he was concreting people's driveways with those teams. So again, that word hustling, he's picking up work when he can. But he must have been a smart guy, because I don't know how, but he got into nursing college, because that's where he met my mum. They were both at nursing college. So somewhere along this journey, he's learned to read and write English, right? And I don't know where that happens in this story, how on earth he gets into nursing college. But he does. So that's where they meet in nursing college in Birmingham. And my mom, she'd left home at 15, really young. She was a nanny to quite wealthy British people in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, really?
So she,
Are you being coy about who that was, or is that not important?
I don't think she would necessarily want the name of the family to be named.
So
It's not like a royal family, but definitely extremely well to do.
Yeah.
And so she was a nanny, and then in those days there was orphanages, where there was babies and children. So she also worked in where she would have I think 4 or 5 babies under her care, and you would live they used to live on site on the premises, caring for these babies. So she spent a lot of her time in early child development and then got into nursing.
Had she grown up in Birmingham?
No, her dad was an insurance salesman, so they'd lived quite around the UK, Basingstoke, Rugby. Birmingham was, I think, where her mom, because her dad passed away when she was quite young, and I think her mum settled in Birmingham. So she'd done some of her growing up.
And so she's out in the world from an early age as well, like 15, 16, making her way, working.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, her father passed away. So her mom then had to become a working woman, which back in the 40s, 50s is not so common. So my nan used to run a sort of a boarding house, bed and breakfast place. Then she could live and have lodgers and tenants. And that was her way of creating income. So that's what my nan was able to do. And then, so then my mum was in nursing, and she met my dad, and they got married and had a baby. I'm not sure quite what order that came in, but we forgive all indiscretions. And then she ended up going into, so she never finished her nursing degree much. That's one of her big life regrets. And
because she was pregnant, because she suddenly had a baby.
Yeah, exactly.
So how old are your parents, do you think, when they got together? Yeah.
43. They are 26.
Okay. Right. And like you say, that's pretty unusual at the time.
Yeah. Oh, it was outrageous. My mom was definitely, she felt like her family really did not want this, really did not like this for her. So I think she experienced her own hardships. And, in those days, if they needed somewhere to rent, my dad couldn't go along, else they would just say that it was sold or it was, taken.
Yeah, wow.
So my mom would have to do that stuff. And when they bought the house where I grew up, there was a little mini protest down the street to get us out and stuff. And of course, in the end, everybody's like, oh, they're lovely neighbours. But in the beginning, it doesn't feel like that. And there's a lot of animosity towards you. I always record it was like when Corona first happened, the funniest flashbacks happened to me because, when Corona first happened, you had to keep your distance from everybody.
Yes, you'd get to a gate or something. You'd have to sort of...
Yeah, or even like walking down the street, you'd see somebody coming, you'd cross the road, because you'd be like respectful of distance. But it totally was a throwback to me of being a kid and people seeing an Asian kid on the road or on a bus and crossing the road or sitting the other side of the bus. Oh, because you're so aware of how Pakistani.
So that was actually your lived experience. It wasn't like vicarious through your father. That was actually your lived experience of walking down the street as a kid and people would cross the road.
That would be the polite version. Yes. Yeah. No, as grown men would spit on me at buses when I was about 12.
Oh my God.
I had to stop sitting upstairs on buses because grown men would just spit at me and stuff like that.
Oh my God.
So I'd always sit next to the bus driver, that first seat where the old ladies sit that can't really move. So it'd be the priority people and I'd sit as close as I could to that batch of ladies. But, it's...
And what about amongst your peer group with your friends? Like, was that...
Well, of course, my friends didn't.
No, sure. But what I mean is, like, were they dealing with the same things or was everyone else white?
Yeah, everybody else is white. You've got to sort of think you're the only person like that. And I think it was much easier for me than my brothers. So, with girls, they cross the road or they spit at you like that. But there's no very little physical violence. Only a couple of times would somebody like pick you up. But for my brothers, they would be walking along and somebody would just like smack them in the head. So for boys, and they went to an inner city Birmingham grammar school. My grammar school was outside of the city. So I feel for the boys, it was much more physically violent. Mine was much more subtle. But you find your ways to get around it. I would go to school at least an hour early. So I'd be on the premises an hour early. So I'd get on the school bus that had like no people on it. And that's just creating those safe environments for yourself so that you can sort of comfortably navigate the world. So you find your ways to deal with those things.
How do you...
But it is, it's different times.
How do you look back on that now? I mean, the way you speak to some of it, you sound very like this, like kind of very resilient, very kind of like, like just figured it out. But looking back on it now, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, it's so hard because I think it's, like how do you summarize it? You can only either share how it felt, which of course was just awful. So you don't want to talk about that too much because then that's just really emotional and very traumatizing. You can only try to think about it from the people's experience that were doing that to you. So, what would make a grown man spit at a child or a grown woman get up and remove herself from sitting next to you or be suspicious that you've stolen something because you walk into a shop, and that can only be from a place of fear for them. So it's so hard to sort of digest it because in all of those situations, you're only ever a threat or an outsider, and that just doesn't feel like a safe emotion to dig into. But you kind of feel like it's not a unique. I think what's awful is that so many people continue to feel that way. And sometimes you feel like the world makes huge leaps forward. Like, let's say with diversity and women's rights, that felt like we were really going somewhere. So that as a woman navigating the world, you felt like, oh, okay, you know, there's space opening up. That's really great. But then if those borders close down again, you know, you get a sense of what it's like to retreat into that place of fear. So I think so, you know, for me, it was gender and it was color. But I think for other people, it can be even more, you know, like you can have even more facets of what makes your world or your place really frightening.
Well, so because I'm just kind of trying to imagine you're growing up in an environment where actually the outside world, if you like, is quite a scary place. There's quite a lot you're needing to navigate. You've got these really traumatic things happening to you. You're maybe seeing it with your brothers, your father, your mum. There's quite a lot of otherness, like, and then your mum's kind of other in the Pakistani environments, in the family, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And then you're like,
it does feel like it does feel like that both. It's not just outside, also inside the home. It feels quite unsafe.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, because like, what was it like inside the home? So
for me, safe. Like I said, also youngest child and a female in a Muslim family, that also felt quite unsafe because there's a lot happening there. Like in terms of also at the same time, there's an Islamic revolution happening in the 70s. So there's this Islamic uprising where, you know, the faith is feeling, people of that faith are feeling really oppressed and pushed down. And of course, if people feel that way, then either you get squashed or you fight against. So, you know, I'm a tiny dot of a child. It means nothing to me. But for my father, then he's really trying to more reinforce the faith and be like, no, you know. So he's leaning into it, which means he is trying to arrange marriages for me. He is trying to demonstrate his faith, even though he married a white woman in the mosque. So he would take us to every service. He would even take me to men-only services, because there were services that, like I said, men and women would sit separately, and sometimes there were services that were just for men. And then he would put me in a tiny room and shut me in because I couldn't go and sit in with the men. But because he wanted to demonstrate, you know, how strong a faith he would have, he would do that by traipsing me along. And so there is, you know, it's funny, the 70s for a half Pakistani minority Shia Muslim girl is in a white neighborhood is, I don't know, definitely felt like rocky ground all around.
So, because actually I thought you were going to say, oh no, but in the home, I felt really safe, protected, you know.
That would have been nice.
No, I thought, for some reason, I thought that's what you might say, because I just have this kind of sense about you that you are someone that feels quite very kind of securely located in yourself, and I kind of tend to think, well, that probably comes from somewhere. But you're saying you weren't really safe in the home, or there was this kind of religious pressure or intensity.
But I mean, I've always, even because of that, I think you should never underestimate the power of love, to give that song its credit. So even though that was going on, I felt loved. So I was very loved by my parents. And so even though there's a lot of danger and turmoil and not knowing what's expected of me, not being able to live up to those expectations, there is still a lot of love. And I think if a child feels loved, then there's enormous possibility.
Yeah. Okay. So that there was there was some kind of stability or foundation there of like a sense of I'm very loved.
Exactly.
But also some sort of maybe some and this isn't unusual perhaps for our lived experience, that there's some sort of mixed messaging as well, or confusion, or how the love is delivered and all of that, but an underlying sense that I'm very loved, but that I'm also in this very scary world, or where I'm very other. So kind of belonging and not belonging at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. So it's funny because there's probably people with a more therapeutic background or psychology background. Perhaps there's even categories to the way that these things fall, in terms of like, is it an environmental factor, or I don't know, an emotional factor, or parental, I don't know what any of that language would be. But I can imagine that there are certain things that, even if they're extremely bad, matter less or more than if you're loved at the center. Do you know what I mean? So perhaps if you're not loved, maybe those other things only have to happen a little bit and it can be even more impactful. So I don't know to what extent those things matter in terms of your early development, or how it impacts you as a human being.
Right. And I guess it's always so individual, isn't it? It's so nuanced and individual, and what for one person might have gone, no big thing, or just didn't seem to impact me at all. For someone else might be that was one of the most traumatic things that's been most unresolved for me. And my point of view would be, well, they can both be true. I mean, it's not like it's such an individual thing, isn't it? But it's interesting when you were first describing, I arrived, I had these two older brothers. I immediately had this sense of this very loved girl arriving, like in this, there were two older boys, and then there was this kind of, I sort of had this idea, I don't know where I got it from, but like this idea that you might have been very doted on in some ways.
I think I was definitely spoiled, for sure. There would have been a huge element of that. And I think for the boys, as a tiny baby arriving, you're just very cute.
Yeah.
So, like there's a lot of being picked up constantly against your will, that sort of put me down, let me go, So there is a lot of that. There's definitely a lot of that. My brothers really used to play rough with each other. So they teased each other enormously. So as well, most of the time it was staying out of their way while they thrashed it out, So having two older brothers was also definitely not a safe space. I'd be like shut in my bedroom, like, good Lord, it's World War III out there, let's leave them to whatever they're up to. So it's they were much older than me. Sometimes you feel a bit more like that cute pet,
Right. Yeah, and that kind of age gap when you're young is, I mean, they're adults and you're a child, basically.
Yeah, huge. It's like I don't really know their friends, that sort of, like I've no clue who they were, because I didn't ever see them playing with them, because they would have been out, they wouldn't have even been in the home playing with them. So it's like you have very little share. It's funny because we have very little shared common childhood memories. Like when you talk to, I don't know if you've got siblings.
Yeah.
When you talk about, like, do you remember that time growing up? There's always one of us that's like, no clue. What are you talking about? I know I wasn't there, mate.
Yeah. So you're then growing up, and there's a period where your dad's kind of toying with the idea of arranging marriage and that kind of thing. Where's your mum with that? Is she kind of going, yeah, what a great idea? Or have they separated by then? No, because they separated when you were 20.
No, I love that idea. Are they toying with that?
Sorry, is that really
I wish there had been more toying.
No, it wasn't. It was very, like, you were going to get
very serious.
Oh, okay.
Yes, you are going to have an arrangement. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was a very large part of the backdrop of my childhood story.
That must have been kind of terrifying, actually. Like, this next thing is being arranged for me. Maybe I don't have any say in that. I'm trying to get my head around that. Like, that must have been pretty.
Oh, don't work too hard on it, Sam. It is very terrifying. It is, and because like I said, I want to make sure that it's my experience of the religion, because I think as well there's so much divisiveness in the world about how people talk about different faiths that I think, oh gosh, I don't need to add any more oil to that fire. So it's definitely my experience, but the way that there's like these sort of rankings on how you choose a wife or how you choose a husband, and how you choose a wife is really on beauty versus how you choose a husband. There's like 50 bajillion thousand categories. And so like sometimes the men that would be presented would be significantly older as well, but because they were educated and faithful. And
How old are you?
So I would have been anywhere between like 12 and 16, and then they would be anywhere between 29 and 45 or something. So, you know, it would be shocking sometimes because often I wouldn't know. So it would be, you'd go and meet some people and then you'd be in the car afterwards and, you know, Dad would be like, so what do you think about him for a husband? You'd be like, was there anyone? And it'd be like, that old man that was in the corner, like the guy? Yes. And you'd be like, I don't know. No.
I mean, and also like when you're in your teens, anyone older than 20 is just basically
like
unimaginably old. I mean, let alone like, you know, like 40-year-old, you're like, I can't even imagine.
You couldn't even fathom.
Yeah,
No, imagine it. No, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So that was a huge backdrop. I mean, my mom was a champion in that respect, in that she made it feel, when I was young, she made it feel like she would be able to sort of hold my dad back, sort of thing. Like these were just exploratory. But I mean, I say when I was young, I mean, it all sort of exploded when I was about 18. So then you're still very young, aren't you?
Yeah.
So, but no, I mean, I'm not close with my dad, and he walked away from me when I was very young. Well, just after that.
Yeah.
And then it was mostly all to do with this topic.
Yeah.
So it's a huge thing in the religion, and I presume it's this way of passing the faith through generations and making sure that religion is passed through, and that's probably why the importance of marriage and partnering people becomes so important. But as a young girl, and when I think about it as a very young girl, it was just not something that I had compromises. There was a lot I was prepared to compromise on, but I couldn't meet all of the needs that he had. So it was what broke our relationship in the end. And that's just really tough. But you sort of, in some ways, I'm so amazed at those mixed faith families that came in those times in the 60s and managed to make it work. Because I think our story is almost either more common or more expected, you know, like you bring together two cultures. You're not encouraged to give any of that culture forward, either through the language or through the integration. And so your children are being born and raised into a totally different world to that one that you were born and raised and expected in. And in some ways, I'm more amazed at those people that have been able to maintain a family relationship and contacts. I think, I don't know how they did it. I never, you know, we didn't manage it.
Well, you got to a point where you essentially just said, that's it. There's no way I'm going to go down this track of arranged marriage. And that, what was there a kind of a pivotal moment when a kind of the line was drawn?
Yeah, exactly. Just as you imagine it.
And then, so then your father's like, well, in which case we can no longer be in contact? Or he's like, I'm leaving the family, or what was?
Yeah, it was the second. He's much more melodramatic. So there was a whole ceremony involved in that parting of ways. It was movie-worthy drama, Sam, where he invited us all to the family, had written letters, and he walked out of the back door, and I never saw him again for like 10, 12 years.
Incredible. And where was your mum with that? I mean, what was she? Was she like, I know this is happening, or this is a surprise, or I'm glad it's
Well,
happening?
I think that's what's really amazing. And like I say, I share this as the child in that story. And I think so much is kept, even if you're a child in a family, you're never really behind the closed bedroom doors. Do you know what I mean? What's happening between a husband and a wife is you feel as a child that you're fully in that family, but actually what's happening between a husband and wife as you become, I am now a wife, you realize that's a whole different relationship and a whole different dynamic to the one that you create as the full family environment. So, my story is very much that of the child in that experience. And I was at university. So when that happened to me, I was literally able to run away and deal with all of that on my own terms. My mom then is obviously going through a divorce and living in the house with somebody then that she's separating from, that's done this to her children. And she tells some of those stories, but again, I think those are stories that she shares with her friends rather than with her children. So we get some of that, but I feel like I get the tip of an iceberg versus all of the feelings that she was having, because I'm sure there would have been parts of her that wanted to protect whatever relationship that we either had with my father or might have in the future. Do you know what I mean? So I think loving parents can also be extremely respectful, even when they're going through traumatic times. So I honestly don't think I could even talk to her experience about it, because I think she would have only have shared such a small amount of that with me.
Yeah. I admire that so much in parents who are separating and where they will still create space for the children, or allow space, or even want space for the children to have relationship with the other one.
Yeah.
Versus,
even when it doesn't, in our case, didn't seem possible and barely was, but still.
Yeah. Wow. And your brothers, where were they in this? You're able to flee to uni.
Oh, well, their number one criteria for marriage is beauty, remember? So, they can marry whoever they like.
They can marry whoever they like. Are they married? So they're kind of 30 or late 20s, aren't they?
Yes. So at this point, my oldest brother is married, and I think he has 2 children under his wing, maybe 3.
Yeah.
And my other brother would have been, where would he have been? Probably in London, living in London, living at large, under none of the constraints that I was living under. So, and then we also didn't really talk much about that. I don't think, because my older brother, I think he had 2, if not 3 young children. So he would have also been living an extremely busy, chaotic life of his own.
Yeah.
And then my other brother, I think, would have been fresh out of uni. And I think he was an investment banker at that time. So he would have been famously working those 80, 100-hour weeks. So we didn't really share, talk, or communicate.
Did they have? So they didn't. Did you? Did you sort of feel like they were in your corner, or they were just remote and off doing their lives?
No, they were 100% in my corner if I would have asked.
Yeah.
And so, when it came to those letters and disowning me, they were 100% like, we stay by you.
So the letters were actually like a formal disowning.
Oh yeah. No, he totally walked away.
And your brothers were like, this doesn't.
Their letters were much nicer, like, oh, I really love you. Sorry that your sisters made me do this. That sort of much shorter. Let's say they were much shorter letters. So mine were.
Oh, I see. So he did letters to your brothers saying, I really
all
love
of
you.
us, an individual, like a letter in front of each of us.
And it's your sister's fault, by the way.
Yeah, but he might have blamed my mum partly, but mostly my mum.
But your brothers, their communication with you was like we're in your corner.
Yes, yeah. I think, even though they didn't live the same way, you can, and they're much older and they've left home, they would have known the sort of pressures, because perhaps, see, the thing is, like, for my older brother, he's so much older. My dad wasn't even going to the mosque when he was born. This is pre-Islamic revolution. So he has like such a totally different childhood. It's crazy. He hardly remembers that religious side of his childhood. So, but they would have been aware, and if I'd have called them when I needed them, they would have been there, as it has been my whole life. Like, we're not too close, but if I call and say, like, I need you to come and help me leave an ex, or they're literally there and within the hours, with the car and with the suitcase and hands on their hips.
Yeah.
So it's like that, people in your corner when you need them.
So you've managed to extricate from this arranged marriage situation, and you're at uni, you're going through uni, and then kind of what happens? How do you kind of segue out into the world of work?
Yeah, so at uni is another completely terrifying experience, because then imagine that you're raised in this bubble, in this like super protected, like you're not allowed out, you're not allowed to drink. Can you imagine like all of those restrictions, like literally physically like chains, and then you are let loose into the world? I mean, it felt like the Wild West to me.
So Derby, was it Derby Uni?
No, Chester Uni was my first uni. I went to Derby later when I did a postgrad.
Okay. So Chester.
I know, I did my masters at Derby.
Is Chester?
Went to Nottingham.
Where are we? We're in the 90s in Chester.
We're in the 90s. We're in 1994. Chester, a really lovely I picked small college university. It's one of the oldest college universities in Britain. So it has walls, it's got real traditions. Again, extremely white. I couldn't have picked another more white university in Britain if I'd have tried. I think there was me. Maybe there was one other Asian boy in our entire year, entire year. I mean, it was white, and then there's white, then there's Chester. But it just felt like the Wild West, leaving home like that. So that was funny. But, I was having a really great, sort of an aside from that, but I was having a great conversation with my daughter this week. She's 11. And I'd listened to it on some podcast, it was probably an Oprah, where they'd been asking children, what is it that you want to be when you grow up? And they answer. And then, what do you think you'll be when you grow up?
Interesting.
And that answer is so different. And so I asked my daughter the same. I was like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she's like, I want to be a biochemist. Surprised me. I was like, okay, great. I said, and what do you think you'll be when you grow up? And she's like, I'll probably just work in an office. I was like, oh, good God. Like, that wounded me, took the air out of my sails. And I said, let's make this analogy a bit more simple for a moment. Let's pretend you wanted to be a dancer and you thought you'd end up being in an office. And then soon will be coming the time to pick your topics that you want to do at school. So what topics would you pick? I said, if you think you're going to end up being in an office, she's like, well, I'll probably pick business studies and maths and, And I was like, okay. And I said, and if you really thought you were going to be a dancer, she's like, well, then you'd pick dance and And I'm like, okay. And then so now you finish school, you go to university, and we went down those routes. And I'm like, and even if you don't end up becoming a dancer, if you've studied dance, if you studied theatre, then you're so much closer coming to that versus if you study business studies and you take work experience in offices and, where do you think your life ends up? I said, so we really have to make sure that whatever it is that you want to be in life, my daughter's name's Emily, whatever it is that you want to be in life, Emily, that we try to make those choices that will help you get there as much as possible.
That's really nice articulation. And I was just looking through your LinkedIn professional history, and I was just kind of saying, isn't it interesting how retrospectively you can join the dots, but it would have been very hard at the beginning of that journey to go, this is where I'll be.
Oh, impossible.
Impossible. But actually, there's a lot in, if you do have the clarity of this is what I would like to create, to start to take those dots backwards and go, well, where do I need to position myself now? There's real smarts in that. Yeah.
Well, and it's like, I wanted to be a judge. So when I was my daughter's age, I really wanted to be a judge. And so it's like a family funny thing. Because, of course, when you end up in HR, sometimes it feels like you're taking judicial responsibility in the workplace. But I really wanted to be a judge, and had somebody like we're the first generation of people that ever went to university in my family. And there's nobody that had those kind of conversations with me. Because if you'd have known that my ambition was to be a judge, which it was, everybody did know in our family, and it comes to the time, what do you want to study? And I had no clue. Probably somebody could have advised, do a law degree. Yeah. You know, like just as a first footing. But nobody did, and nobody, even though it was a very clear ambition, some reason I didn't even realise that law was a degree. You know, when you're from somewhere that has no exposure to
I totally get it. Yeah, it's like, why would you know?
I just assumed that the things you studied at uni were the same topics that you studied at school.
Yeah.
So I picked maths and English as my degree because those were two of my A levels. So I didn't even know that you could do other topics and nobody shared that with me. Nobody had those kind of conversations with me. So it's, you know, like, it was just, I thought it was such a lovely thing to hear somebody express it like that, and then to do that sort of mini test with my daughter, and to have the wind taken out of my own sails, like, oh, you know, just look how easy that could be to not end up living the life you want, because the power of what you expect of yourself can just unconsciously overtake your life. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So unconsciously, small steps, but in the end, build a full staircase.
You know, it's funny, I was having a thought about this as well this morning, about how important it is, those moments, those various transitions as we're growing up, where some encouragement, some guidance can just make so much difference.
Right.
Versus just being left to kind of drift and fall into whatever, you know, maybe not understanding what the options are, or maybe not having the confidence. And just a little bit of encouragement, a little bit of direction, a little bit of guidance can just be that nudge that's all you need to kind of get you onto the next rung.
100%. It's like then, as I've become older, you know, my husband, he is from a family that are all actually microbiologists and dentists, or educated, or university, many generations. And he'd done the Erasmus program. And when I moved internationally, everybody seemed to know what that was. I was like, what is it? How do you all know about this? Yeah. And what is it? Yeah. And this international opportunities that people at university are given. I'm like, I never knew that. They were like, well, did you ever go into your student union? I never, ever went into my student union. You know, even those kind of like, if somebody had sort of told you that there's an office where you can go and just talk to people about what the university can do for you. I went through an entire 3-year degree. Never even knew that there was student services like that. Yeah. So those kind of things where already the world of university, the freedom was mind-blowing enough. And then to not have anybody give you these just small pieces of like guidance or nudges.
Did you enjoy uni?
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it. But like I said, it was life-changing, eye-opening. I didn't know that people could live this way, or how independent you can imagine if you're in an environment where you're so held down, you're constantly trying to break free. So, you know, I knew that once I left home, I would never go back. So you're sort of striving for that independence. And university, by the end of those 3 years, I knew that I can stand on my own 2 feet.
Oh, very cool.
I've got this. You know, that's what that gave to me, that sort of experience.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love that. I can really feel it, that clarity of intent Like,
Yeah.
I know I'm not going back. So I'm going forwards. So I'm here to find out how I do that. And
Yeah. And it's not that actually, and when I finished uni, I did go and live back with my mom for a year. So it's not that I didn't need it or it wasn't there. It was just, I don't want it.
Yeah.
So you do everything you possibly can to avoid it, and there's always the chance of failures where it feels like failure where you have to go back or whatever. But, everything is about stand on your own 2 feet, stand on your own 2 feet. So that's what you
So then we're beginning to segue into professional life. So just tell me, I'm just interested about that first foot on the ladder. Like, how did you get that? What happened?
I think so I came out with a 2-1 degree in maths and English literature. It was 75% maths and 25% English literature.
What an interesting combination, by the way.
I was the only student in the university to do it.
I'm not sure I've heard someone do that. That is really unusual, I think.
I know. And it was truly the useless kind of maths, bless me. I was really pure maths. So it was like proving 1 is a real number and that 1 + 1 does equal 2. I spent 3 years proving that stuff, which most 3-year-olds know straight off the bat. So it was really the theory of maths that I loved, that sort of side of it. But it was coming out of uni, it was about applying to every single job and opportunity. Do you remember in those days you'd have like Mars and the Big Four, like Ernst & Young, and all of them would do those assessment centres. And so I would apply to all of those kind of graduate schemes. And I was always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Like for 2 of those big programmes, I got on their shortlist but didn't get through to the offer. So past all, so many stages. It's the interview, the assessment centre, the interview, and I would get through all the stages and then not get the offer. And so in the end, I started as a trainee chartered accountant in a little accounting firm in Birmingham where they paid for all your qualifications and they paid £8,000 a year salary, which even back in 1998 was
not much,
no money at all. But and it was before computers were on the table, so they would literally put boxes and boxes of bank statements and like a ledger in front of you, and you'd spend the entire day cross-checking the ledger to the receipts, to the statements. And the woman opposite me would be asleep at her desk with her head on the table.
I'm feeling a bit depressed just as you're describing it. Like,
oh God, it was awful. And the partners sat down another area and they didn't have like an intercom system. So if they needed you, they would literally just holler, Salma! And you'd have to run along like that's with your pencil. So I didn't last long. I think I lasted 9 months before I was ready to give up that ghost. I was like, this life, it's not for me.
No.
It's not. I can't believe that people do this for an entire career. But I didn't give up accounting. So then I joined an accounting firm that was, at the time, there was this bubble going on where people could set themselves up as their own independent companies and sort of freelance. And it was a way to then not pay yourself much salary. You only needed to pay yourself whatever salary helped you put into a pension pot. And the rest you would claim as a dividend at the end of the year. So it was kind of a way to use whatever tax regulations to kind of maximize your income. And so I was doing that, and I had to do
wasn't that
in London.
Wasn't that Gordon Brown? Wasn't that
we're in, what are we in now? We're probably in 1998.
Does that seem about right timing wise? I got a feeling that was one of Gordon Brown's initiative, was to encourage people into that, create lots of limited companies to get people on get people on the register,
And they would be called anything limited, like Greenleaf Print Limited, like anything you like. And we couldn't do it fast enough, and it was great. I had 3 months training in London, living in a hotel in Angel, Islington. Time of my life. And then And then, but what it turned out, because they would use the accountants to also bring in the new clients. And it turned out I was just really brilliant at converting clients or prospects into clients, and really good at sales. So they closed the Birmingham branch. And when they did that, I thought, oh, well, do you know what? Maybe I'm better at sales than I am at accounting. And so I ended up joining the brewery in telesales.
Okay.
Doing really well at it. Really, really well.
Because then that got you into the brewery side of things.
That got me totally randomly into the brewing industry, which I ended up being in for like 17 years. You know,
because then you then got an opportunity. Did you then go from that to Heineken, or did Heineken come later?
No, Heineken was like, so this was Bass Brewery, which was like a really lovely British brewery back in the day. Now that's owned by Coors Brewers, but originally it's a long steeped family brewing as an industry, all these family businesses, actually farming. You can think of them as farming family businesses from back in the day. So those big name brands like Bass or I don't know who would have been another one, Theakston's or things like that. They were all farming families. And again, totally attracted to fully white industries. I mean, talk about white male industry, talk about going to the place, like that's comfort ground. But I was just really good at sales, and I kept getting promoted, managing sales teams. Scottish and Newcastle bought, so Coors Brewers bought Bass, and then they ended up closing their Birmingham branch as everything sort of moved to Burton and Leeds way. And then that's when I joined Scottish and Newcastle, and then as a trainer. And it was there at Scottish and Newcastle where they had this change of HR to bring in HR business partners and wanted people from the business. And through my training background, they were like, oh, actually, that would be a great segue.
So I was really curious that how does that transition happen from going from sales into the HR side? But I can see that as you start running teams, you start moving into that more managerial, then you're kind of into training. And then actually it's not such a big jump to then move into...
It felt like such a sideways step in that sense. And then the Scottish and Newcastle, because HR is a profession in the UK, a chartered profession. So then they offered to pay for me to do my master's in HR and my CIPD, my chartered exams, whilst I was working full time. And I used to do that on a Tuesday evening and on my weekends. And then Heineken bought Scottish and Newcastle. It's such a consolidated industry, brewing.
Yeah.
And so then Heineken bought Scottish and Newcastle. And they had a project at the head office, which was between sales and HR. And it's not so common in the Netherlands that people have cross-functional careers. So they were looking for somebody that had had experience across both the commercial and the HR.
Perfect.
And they asked me to go. And that was the very first time I'd lived abroad. For me, even working in Scotland felt like going abroad. I'm a bit embarrassed to say it. I mean, I know it's another country, but it's part of the UK.
I think the Scottish would be delighted to hear you say that. Yes, we are a different country.
Yeah, they are a different country. But it's just, you're not crossing an ocean. So somehow it felt so funny to consider that as an international. But moving to the Netherlands really, really was the first time that I'd lived abroad and worked abroad.
So it was Netherlands, but then you went from the Netherlands to Suriname,
which is this tiny little country on the Amazon rainforest north of South America, in between British and French Guiana.
Wow.
It's the country
I was trying.
the Netherlands
I didn't.
Swapped.
It was a colony.
Britain owned it. And no, Britain owned it, and the Dutch owned New Amsterdam, which is now New York. And in whatever trade agreement the British did with the Dutch, they swapped.
Someone was a good deal maker there. So yeah, oh gosh, okay. So that was, you were in the Americas.
Yeah, South America.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually just a wonderful, that's probably where I will learn most of my Dutch, because I've been in Amsterdam for like 4 years, I want to say 3-4 years by that point. But everybody speaks English in Amsterdam. So even though I was having Dutch lessons, it's very difficult to learn Dutch. And I'd picked up a Dutch boyfriend by this point. But it was in my 9 months in Suriname that I learned the most Dutch.
So then you're beginning to see the world now. You're relocating, and then do you end up in Ethiopia at some point? Is that right?
Yeah, but that's later.
That's
So
later.
with those 3 years that I did in the head office of Heineken, I actually travelled to about 24 countries in 3 years.
Yeah.
So this assignment they gave me really opened my eyes, like really opened. And I'm traveling to Burundi and Kinshasa and Nigeria and South Korea and Poland and
What's it opening your eyes to?
Just how modern the world is, how you've got to, like I say, sort of remember that childhood before internet and things like that. Often you have these sort of preconceptions of countries from encyclopedias, quite frankly, or from perhaps one person that you've ever met from those places, or from the comedy that's on telly. So your experience of the Caribbean might be from watching Cool Runnings, or I don't know.
Yeah,
right. Like those,
sure.
That's the way that you're experiencing the world. And I'm going out there and being like just blown away how modern the world is and how many similarities and the worries that people have are the same, but how different the food is, how different the expression in the workplaces. Like we go to Kinshasa and halfway through the workshop, I'm training at some point like 30 of their best sales managers who are, of course, all experienced senior guy, all men, like I'm nearly always in a men's world. And then halfway through the workshop, they're like, we love to dance, Salma, and you have given us a great morning. Let's get up and sing and dance. I'm like, okay, let's get up and sing and dance.
Yeah, this isn't happening back in the UK.
Certainly not in the Netherlands. Difficult to get them to crack a smile, but we're getting like a song and a dance out of the team in Kinshasa. And you go to Spain and you're having dinner at like 10, 11 o'clock at night. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm never going to sleep. Somebody put me to bed, this is way past my bedtime and they're just getting going.
Yeah.
So you're sort of, even what's on your next door feels so different. The world felt so alive. And of course, I'm beginning to also experience my skin color in a different way, because whereas in Britain and the Netherlands, people ask me, I don't know, without exaggeration in those days, and now it's less, but in those days, it must have been 10 to 20 times a day. Where are you from?
Oh, man.
And you'd say Birmingham. And then they're like, no, but where are you really from? And you're like, Sutton Coldfield? It's like, no, where are you really from? I'm like, do you just want to know where the colour of my skin is from? Like, just tell me what information.
10 to 20 times a day.
10 to 20 times a day until I was probably 32. It is phenomenal amount. Yeah. But then you start to live and working all around the world. And everywhere I go, people think I'm from that place. So I'm in Egypt, they're talking to me in Arabic. I'm in Italy, they're talking to me in Italian. I'm in France, they're talking to me in French. We never had holidays as kids, parents, social workers. We never went abroad. So you're in South Korea and they think I'm South Korea. And I'm like, apparently I blend in.
You're universal.
As well. I'm universal, except for anywhere north of London. But like, other than that, it turns out I can be from that place. And that's just so funny in a warm way, except then when they realize you can't speak the language. And
but isn't that a sort of lovely kind of arc where, like, going from I'm always different to I'm always belonging.
Yes.
That's lovely. Yeah. That's a really lovely.
Yeah, and it brings a different type of Yeah, exactly. It brings a different type of experience. And like I said, it just felt amazing to travel the world and see how people live. It also makes me funny so sometimes now when people talk about immigration and like, why are all these people coming to our countries? And often I'm thinking they definitely don't want to. I think 99.9% of the world want to stay at home because their homes are beautiful and they're lovely and they are living the way that they want to live in it's not like some backwards civilization out there, whatever it is in your mind that you think about it.
No,
so it's always funny. The more I travel, the more I think people don't want to leave home. That's not, I cannot imagine anybody wants to put all of their belongings in a handkerchief on a stick over their shoulder and carry 3 children across the world. That's cannot be.
No.
So it's just that, the world felt really joyful in that way, oh wow, this is amazing.
And were you at this time also getting a real sense of joy and purpose in this new professional role? So I say new, but obviously you're getting very experienced, but you're now on the HR side.
Yeah.
And are you feeling like, this is something that really means something to me?
Well,
I can get.
Yeah, and it felt like a natural talent in that sense. If something feels like it's coming a little bit easier because either you're doing it well but by this point, HR is in the middle of a company. And then by this point, I've done finance and sales and training and HR. So you sort of also realize the more experience you have in different careers, I think before you come into HR, probably the better.
But I think that's unusual, isn't it? Probably. And maybe not specifically to HR, but just generally, I think one of the things that I'm sometimes met with really is the kind of development opportunity is when people get to the top of the chain, but in fact, they're very siloed in their experience because they've just come through one channel of the business. And so now they're at the chief's table, and it's actually part of the opportunity is to become a bit more cross-functional. And develop that kind of awareness and savvy and
no, I definitely from my experience have seen how valuable it has been to move cross-functionally. So it felt easy in that sense because I could understand the challenges of the different teams or departments that felt didn't feel like hard work.
Right, because I guess one of the kind of cliches is that it might be something like, oh, the HR function, they don't understand what we're doing. They don't get
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
And so being able to actually be able to stand in those folks' shoes and go, well, actually I have a good sense so I can relate.
Yeah, well, and people will often say, like, if you do like anonymous feedback or stuff like Salma's very commercially minded, and you sort of think, okay, I think it's not that I'm any more commercially minded than anybody else. It's just that you've got some experience in there. And I think any time in life where you've been able to have experience, you're more able to naturally understand the people's needs and anticipate those.
Well, particularly in the HR function, maybe as you're increasing in seniority in the organization, you become more and more a strategic partner of the other parts of the business. That probably is occurring earlier, lower down in the kind of organizational hierarchy as well, but it becomes more and more, and then what I observe is that when you're then the chief people officer, there is an opportunity there for you to be, in a way, the critical strategic partner with the CEO. There are a million different ways the dynamics can work, but I think sometimes that partnership, the CEO and the chief people officer, is like that's the core. Sometimes you go, oh no, it's the chief financial officer or something like that, but because you are having to, you are having to well, you could speak to this better than me, but you're needing to understand and influence how strategy is dispersed through the organization.
Yeah.
And you're key to that.
Yeah. And I definitely felt in every time the voice of the CEO or the general manager, like in Heineken, you only have the one CEO, of course, at the head office, but you have many of them who are running the countries, and they feel like a CEO because they're independent in that sense. And so their particular voice is so extremely loud and strong, that even though the voice of the HR is loud and strong, it's in a sense only in relationship to the person that you're working with. So it can feel very different, your voice, depending on who it is that you're working with, and how much they allow you to use it, or how much you need to combat and like feel like it's a combat, because you're fighting for something or for someone. So it's all it often feels like a relationship.
Yeah, so it so much depends on that dynamic, doesn't it? And
yeah,
and I see that if you've got a very powerful, it's a GM or CEO,
yeah,
and but you've also got a very powerful CHRO, their business partner. Like they're the person who can actually play coach to the GM or the CEO, right? Like there is a sort of privileged position there where they can really help that leader in how they're showing up in the business and maybe where they've got some blind spots and gaps, but they're not necessarily open to that. So it takes a particular kind of CEO who's up for that and open for it, and a particular kind of CHRO who's also able to do that for them.
Yeah. And I think then sometimes, like we said, often when we were talking about the personal experiences, often people don't realize what's happening behind closed doors, if you know what I mean. You only see what's outside. And I think a lot of the time for an organization, because it's so visible, let's say the policies of HR or the outward facing things of that culture, of the expression of the values, of the organizational structure. So it feels like everything. It feels like you've experienced and you're in that family and you're living it. But often you don't realize also what's been happening behind closed doors, and it doesn't often bring you anything to know. Like a lot of times people talk about transparency and want to know more, how did you make that decision? What things were considered? What was involved? What were the choices available? And especially in lots of other areas of the business, you're able to really share like the consumer research, the process that went into that. Whereas sometimes I think there's suspicion around some of those HR policies and processes because it can be more difficult to explain the factors that went into it, the choices that you considered, because some of those choices aren't things that you want to even hear. Like, you considered closing down the business, you considered relocating it to China, I don't know, whatever all of those things could be. And, there's no need to bring that kind of uncertainty, that unsettled nature, and so it's oftentimes playing this dynamic between how much do you share about the conversations, whether that's influence or not. Like, so whether it's a debate, an argument, an agreement, there's lots of words to kind of describe that relationship behind the doors. And how much do you give transparency of that because it's for the good, and it helps people to absorb that, and how much do you not because you're like, we have 100 thoughts, and
you can't, like it's not necessarily helpful to be sharing your process with everyone. And I've certainly heard people reflect on this, that one of the things they find very difficult is sitting on things that they're not able to disclose. And they feel that internal conflict where there are, let's just say stakeholders in the business. And I just I'm not allowed to, or it's not helpful.
Even legal requirement
to disclose.
You'll breach employment law. Yeah.
And so I'm now having to communicate with sort of hidden information, and I feel the tension. I feel the internal conflict of that.
You do, and like with one of my ex-CEOs, we never used to use scripts and stuff like that. I've always found scripts really difficult, and I think it's because it's better to, rather than be careful of the words that you say, sort of, what was that phrase? Sometimes they attribute it to a UK Prime Minister, like, be careful of the words that you say because they come from the things that you think. Be careful of your thoughts because it comes from, and then your behaviours. Be careful because it comes from your feelings. So it was always easier for us to really be clear on our intentions. Like, what is it that we're trying to achieve here? Because then when you stand up and speak to the entire company, you don't have to think about your words because they just flow.
Yeah, I love that.
I always feel I hate working from scripts. Don't give me that. Instead, make sure that I really understand what we're aiming for, what we're trying to achieve, and then it will.
And why we're doing it, what's motivating it. If we can
speak to that.
And then any question that's thrown at you, you know where you are because you're answering from that clarity.
Exactly. And it's the only thing that has always helped me be more authentic, because there's so many things that you would like to say, but then what does it bring you that you can't say? There's so many of those that you're sort of like, that it's a constant worry about protecting that relationship that you have with the employees. And it's so easily destroyed even when you don't mean it to be. But because of some of those shackles and chains that sit around you, and employment law is written for the benefit of employees, I should hope. So it's not that it's not even there for a good intention, but it can be extremely, extremely challenging. So any sort of advice that I would have for people in those situations is, if you focus more on knowing why you're doing something and to what end, then
everything comes from that. Yes,
everything will come from that.
That's really nice.
And if you start to feel doubtful about that, then that's always worth revisiting.
That's really nice. Well, okay, Salma, there's actually, we could definitely do a 2-hour podcast just on what we're getting into right now, but I'm gonna move us along a little bit because I want to make time for what's going on in your world right now. But before we do that, if you were to, I'm going to put you on the spot here, but so first of all, on a professional side and then on a personal side. So on a professional side, what would you say if you were to distill into a core learning? You're kind of speaking to some of that right now, but if you were to distill a kind of core learning that you've gained, and maybe in terms of how to lead transformation in organizations, and maybe you've just framed it really well, but is there anything else you would add as like a core insight around leading in these organizations?
I would say in terms of the leading for yourself, never be afraid of the opportunities that come your way. I often feel that half of my career is built not from necessarily the decisions that I've made, but the opportunities that have come away and to which ones I've said yes or no to. So I think, having more fearlessness to those opportunities, whether it's cross-functional moves or moving to Ethiopia or, wherever they've never been bad decisions in my life. And then the sort of, in terms of leadership, I think it's always gone best when I've led with a listening ear first. So done as much as I can to try to, because every company and every team is very different, even though a lot of the time the processes in themselves structurally can look very similar. the way in which they're created or developed feels always really different. And that sense has been really valuable in terms of like this new venture, like becoming an entrepreneur. Every time that I do more to listen to, this new venture is around teenage girls. So every time I do more to listen to what the girls are expressing is their experience of the world, their challenges, their needs, then it sets me up again for, oh, okay, I hadn't really thought about it in that way. Let me spend a moment there. So I think that in leadership is just so important.
So what I'm hearing you articulate there is something like you're always seeking to understand, and listening is the key to that.
Yeah, but without being worried that. I think there can also be a lot of worry at work. Like if we do something different or new, what will that mean? What will that create in terms of change? And I think the work environment feels like it's changing rapidly, especially since Corona. A lot of things that you took for granted have changed significantly in the way that people engage with other colleagues at work, in the way that they engage with their work environment, in the tools, that this sort of explosion of tools in your workplace. I mean, literally, Microsoft, God bless them, were like your be all and end all at one point. And now, you can hardly go through a day without having to open Jira, Miro, Google, Zoom. I don't know how many other platforms you've got open at any one moment, Canva, like these are just tools that are part of the course. So much is changing so very, very quickly. And I think it's also listening without a fear lens. And that's extremely challenging to do, because it's not only your fear lens that you're managing, it's also the fear lens of the rest of your executive team or the rest of the managers in the business. Because any kind of change in the HR world tends to typically impact everybody.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal.
Okay, well, I'm resisting the urge to go into more inquiry into all of that, actually, but maybe that's for another time. And then just to be a little more esoteric, Salma, you've described this really, I think, extraordinary arc of your life and what you were born into, and then a lot of not belonging and sort of insecurity, foundation of being loved as well, but then going through this arranged marriage and the family separating, and then going out into the world and seeing the world, traveling the world, working cross-functionally, etc., all this amazing arc. And what would you say, if I have this idea that we are all, each of us here, to learn, to grow, and then within that, there might be some very particular lessons that are very particular to us as an individual that we're here to have, that's like part of our curriculum for our life, is like, hey, Sam, you get to find out all about this, and then this is going to be the kind of discovery for you. I don't know if that makes sense, but like, what would you say has been the kind of core learning for you as a person in this life? What's being brought forward for you to learn, would you say, as a core?
I feel like that's impossible. There's so much. There is so much. I mean, like, it feels those lessons that you learn or that I learned early on, like needing to be independent and learning how important that is to the sort of essential survival skills. I feel like now, as in this stage of my life, it's all about undoing that learning and learning what it means to be part of the family unit that I've created together with my husband. And so many of those arcs, the early days of success, and then now coming into this period of my life where it feels far more certain that failure is on my horizon and uncertainty. So it almost feels like the lessons that serve me well and that I learned early on, now my arc is to learn the exact opposite and to experience what it means, to to all of those others, which of course it brings a huge amount of uncertainty. And what does that mean? And I think, I have no clue. But it is like, I feel like I literally can feel the turning of the tables, and it's like, oh, okay, here we go. Second half I'm literally going to be 50 next year. So like second half of your life, or it does physically feel like the world is shifting on its axis, and either I can embrace that, or I can be terrified. And depending on which moment of the day you ask me, I'm probably a little bit of both.
Well, there's something in what you're describing on both sides of that axis about being in the conviction of self, conviction of who you are and what you're about, and that maybe the discovery of that through the adversity of you need to go and be fiercely independent, but then also the discovery of that through belonging and uncertainty or something like that, or there's just something for me in what you're describing where there's a requirement to have personal conviction on both sides of that equation.
Both of them are about the experience, and they're big, bold experiences, either which way or the other. So your my ability to stand and weather those storms. And I definitely think love is a huge part of what gives you or what's given me my safe foundation to stand on whilst the rest of the floor shakes all around you. So I think that's so not to be underestimated, how much strength that can give a person.
Oh my goodness. And I just think, time and again, it does all come back to love, doesn't it? It all comes back to loving, and it really does. I think that's both profound. It's esoteric, but it's also very practical and tangible. In the way that things work well, is it really does all come back to loving. It always does, in a way, whatever we're doing and whatever we're about.
Yeah, and it does feel like that foundational piece, because I'm also getting to that stage of my life where my parents are much older, probably yours too. And so, I talk there about love in the sense that I was surrounded in it from a young age, rather than the love that I'm creating in my relationship now. So sort of foundational piece. So it is also, that piece of where that came from being sort of over this coming period of my life will be torn away from you. So it's sort of, it's so important that it's there, that you recognize it, you hold on to it, and then you're able to let it go, or be able to create that for somebody else. In my case, my daughter, but to appreciate, okay, we're going to have 1,000 arguments, we're going to disagree with 100 things, and I'm sure she's going to want to push away from me too. That's the stages of life she needs to go through. But can I offer her that same safe platform from which to bounce away from?
Well, I can only imagine that you are doing that, and we haven't kind of got into the whole family side of things, like how you met your husband or partner, or
he's been all of those.
All those things.
Currently my husband.
Currently your husband. Okay.
I hope he stays that way.
Currently husband.
That should be definitely a different podcast for another day.
Okay. But let's talk about this what I see as being a work of love, which is your new business. So what is it, and why? And love to hear some more about that. I think it's really exciting what you're doing.
So it's been something that I've wanted to do for an extraordinarily long time. And it's always been a back burner of like, if I lived another life, I would set up an underwear business for young women. And I don't know, I mean, I've been surrounded by women. My brother has 8 children and his first 4 were girls. I have a daughter. I have many nieces. Like I said, my mum managed day nurseries, so there's a lot of children, and my dad was a social worker for the 5+ age range of children. So there was often our family conversations were all children, all about children. My entire life growing up was about the protection and the care and the development of children. So he was in the space of looking out for children that were not being so well cared for, and my mum was providing care for babies.
Yeah.
So that's all been our life. So it's from a very long time. And then with my nieces, it's always just been a challenge to buy them their first bras, like to find something nice and lovely. And when I lived in Ethiopia, and that was 2014, around then I had some designs made up, and I started to look at manufacturers and take it more seriously. Like, maybe not only if I lived another life, I would be doing this. Perhaps it could be something for this lifetime. But it's always felt huge and extremely frightening, and I have no experience. Like, my endeavour into this is not about fashion. It really is about providing something that I've never been able to find for the girls myself, and wanting to bring an element of joy to getting dressed in the morning. For boys, I have a lot of nephews as well in my life, and for boys, when you see them in their pants, it's far more funny. They seem to revel in showing you their pants and running around in their pants, whereas girls, our relationship with our bodies is often far less joyful, and our bodies physically change in so many ways.
Okay, so the business is about creating bras specific, own bras, girl pants, bras.
Well, I'll probably do both, but the bras is the hardest.
And for a very particular age range.
Yeah, I mean, I say it's young women.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you probably, depending on when you start needing a bra, it's probably somewhere between like 10 and then up to like 18, 16, 18. But once you're a teenager, your relationship with your underwear changes, or an older teenager, young 20-year-old woman, your relationship changes.
So say a bit more about, because we've spoken about this before, and to be honest, I've got two boys. They're 18 and 20, and
hopefully not still running around the house in their pants.
Well, maybe occasionally. But so the kind of the arc of a girl growing up, and the kind of things that she's going through, and then in relation to her clothes and changing body, all of that. I didn't have any. That wasn't on my radar at all as a parent.
No.
So just say a bit more about that, and why what you were seeing as the missing, the gap.
For me, it just feels like underwear is all created for women, by women probably, or by men, I don't know, but for women especially. And of course, women, we have a need for it. So I understand that, and that's catered for really well, and we have a lot of choice. But every time when it's teenagers, or I've got a niece entering that phase, or now my daughter entering that phase, everything just feels not set for them. And certainly even going, I don't know how often you walk into a women's underwear shop, but women's lingerie can sometimes seem quite aggressive, or certainly assertive, because as well, it's made for women and about female empowerment. But you can walk into an environment where there's corsets and suspenders and all sorts of exciting stuff. That if you're a teenager and a girl entering this, there's already quite a lot of change. And then to see some of that other stuff as well can feel quite overwhelming. So it's the challenges I've faced is, one, where to get a product. It's almost impossible to find the products that I'm looking for. And then how to navigate even looking in the spaces where they're available, feeling in a safe way and in a fun way rather than in a sexy way. Just like, how do I grow it with my body and enjoy it, and it feel like it's also fun in the morning to get dressed.
Right. So because there's something about, the clothes we wear, there's something where it's for us and it's for other people. And then that balance between the two, or where the emphasis is, that may change. I mean, that may be particular to the individual, but it may change as you're going through different phases, and so of growing up. And so you're looking at these girls who are going through, their bodies are changing, and you're wanting them to have a particular experience. Can you just say more about
Yeah,
what that
well,
is?
I think as young women pay really a lot of attention to the clothes that they wear. I mean, most women, but especially when you're young, you really do pay a lot of attention. And I live in a place where there's no school uniforms, so that experience, like in Britain, there's a lot of school uniforms. Um, but that experience of having to choose and actively choose what you're going to wear is an everyday occurrence here. And, when I interview the girls and talk to them, a lot of them put out their clothes the night before. They spend a lot of time choosing them versus the relationship they have with their underwear, which is often just whatever they have got that fits at that moment. It's really an afterthought, and it feels a lot about the relationship they have with their body, because of course it's the closest thing to them. And I just think that's not okay. It can't be that it's just an afterthought, because for us, when your body is changing, then it's actually a need as well. So it's like, how can I fulfill a need and not just have it be a functional, like, here's a white bra, put it on, it functionally holds all your bits in. But how can it also be with as much care and attention as you put in, and create that moment of like, this is something for me. Nobody's going to see it, but this is something for me, and it makes me feel happy. And then the rest of your clothes are very much like you expressed it, probably more for the others, for whether it's your girlfriends, your teachers, your parents, I don't know, whoever you're dressing up for that particular day. So this is much more, what's something lovely about it is something much more for you, and the designs that I'm working on is very much a play and an expression about that. And I don't want to say much more about it because I'm literally trying to design that as we speak. But it is very much centered on your experience with your underwear and how to have a more positive one with it.
Yeah. Amazing. And I'm imagining that there are also then the thing that keeps popping into my mind as we're discussing this, I've got this kind of like social media flashing in my brain. Like, how do you navigate that? And also how that's so much a part of the narrative and the relationship that young people have with their clothes, with themselves, what they're projecting out into the world. Then there's the kind of questions I got in my mind around, and I think this is something that's being discussed more and more, but that kind of reduction in the age of the sexualization of women, like social media being a huge driver of that.
Huge part of that.
And so how do you think about those things, and how does this initiative fit into all of that, or push back against some of that?
It's so impossibly difficult to think about it in too much. Like, if I stare at that mountain in one go, then I just won't even dare to climb it.
Sure.
So, my experience of e-commerce in terms of like marketing, advertising, zero, that's absolutely not my wheelhouse. And I'm definitely going to have to lean on the skills of people like Ella, actually.
Great.
Contact that we had. We were just having a meeting yesterday about what can she do to help me even consider that before we go into a launch. But when it's funny, when I think about this business, I think about it in two different ways. So I have one is about creating these bras that I'm doing and I'm very busy with. But a big part is, in the end, I would love to open a physical store. Now, when my mind goes to that place, it's not an underwear store. That's what's funny. When I go to opening a physical location, of course, it's selling the product. But all I can think about when I'm doing that is how to bring teenagers together into a physical sense. So whether it's that they're doing their homework together, they're able to do 5 minutes on a mic because they've always wanted to be a stand-up, or play their guitar for each other 2 minutes, or all I can think of is, and I guess it was back in our times, there was a lot more community centres or youth clubs, or I don't know. And when I think about the physicality, my mind is only going to, how can I bring teenagers together? And so somehow those two things kind of conflict, because you're like, Salma, you're building this bar brand, and that is what I'm focused on and trying to do. But when I think about what that looks like in physical form, I can only think about the social experience for the teenagers. So I don't know where that journey is going to take me, honestly.
Well, it's really interesting, and it's kind of rather lovely to have it as an open question right now. Like, how do all those pieces go together? But I can see the through lines there, and in terms of intent and purpose, and the experiences you're wanting to create for these young women, and then maybe also it's going to become more and more important that there are these different ways that teenagers can congregate and come together, and perhaps in the world that we're moving into, which is more and more digital, where we're going to have, people are talking about having, you just have your digital friend now, that's all done for you with an AI, and it'll have graphics to it now because that's all exploded, hasn't it? And so,
and it makes you feel in the moment, when I can be sat now, I don't, maybe a bit like you, Sam, but now I can be sat the whole day working alone and not feel lonely because I'm on a call with you, and I've got to do my Instagram post today because I committed to doing 1 post a week. And so, I'm going to spend my time working on that. So I cannot feel lonely. But then in those moments where it counts, like I want to celebrate something, or I might not be feeling great and want to call a friend to come around, how do people navigate that? I'm lucky enough to have real human friends that if I say I want to go out and celebrate tonight because I had a great podcast, somebody will come, and either we go for a walk, or and I can talk about it, or go for a drink, or whatever it is that's our bag. But in a world where perhaps the lived experience is only a digital one, I don't know where the next generation find those in real life moments.
Well, and creating spaces where peer groups can support each other, have that contact, and I think it's easy to forget how it is different to be in person with people, and there's real value in doing that. And of course, there's so much convenience in doing everything remotely, and it's not that that's a bad thing, but it's important that we stay in touch with what it's like to be physically in touch as well, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like, and that's why I say it's not that I feel lonely in this moment of working alone. I can't quite express the words. It's almost like if you know that your body needs to move, and so, like you physically walk or you do your exercise, but can you run 5 kilometers if you need to? Can you go up a set of stairs, even if you've theoretically watched people run a marathon on telly, and you've walked around your garden, so
that
your legs move. But then there's something different to doing it in real life. So there's something in that analogy is a little bit how I feel about the digital environment, that somehow you cannot feel lonely because you're surrounded by events on your phone and activities that don't make you feel that way. But at the moment when you need a connection, that's when you suddenly realize, I haven't deployed that muscle. I don't have that muscle. It's not available to me, even though I thought it was, because I'd seen it.
And I think it's interesting in the world of retail. I think that's really coming through at the moment, isn't it? Where retail is saying, everyone can go and get our products wherever they like. They don't have to move. They can do it from their home. But so it's about creating an experience that people want to come together around. And like Gymshark, it has built an amazing business which was founded on community. And so then the stores
go Birmingham, they have their flagship.
Absolutely, and so then their stores become about creating that experience, that community experience, because that's why why would you go to a store? Like, because I'm part of something, and then I'm coming to be in that community.
Yeah. And it almost feels too separate. That's why sometimes the physical presence and I feel like two different businesses in a sense.
Yeah.
Like, so I haven't quite merged those ideas.
No, sure, but
together in one.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I can tap into this world of teenagers, I love spending time with them. This week, I do the CV and interview skills workshop for my local international secondary school. And they're the people in their final year. And it's just so nice. This is my 4th year running doing it. And I just love spending time in their world, listening to their stories. And I get them to do this exercise, which is the opening one is, what are your first impressions of me? Which is always frightening.
Oh my gosh.
Because they don't know me at all. And so, they get to talk to each other and share their first impressions of you. It's just always, so it's like a vulnerable but so nice moment to also.
It's so good, isn't it? And this intergenerational engagement is so good. It's good for all of us, whichever part of whichever generation you're in. And I've just about to complete with a really lovely group of guys, lads who my son's mates. We had a group and we met. We've been meeting every Monday at lunchtime for pizza, and we've been doing the kind of getting revision basically and getting ready for A levels, and they're doing their exams now. They're just about to finish, and but for me it's been such a joy to have that engagement. It's always fun to be with our children's friends, but to have this and to be having a very I think kind of very sophisticated engagement with them as well. And just seeing how they've really embraced the opportunity to support each other, actually, and it's just been a lovely thing to be a part of.
Oh, well, maybe remember that question for one of your next pizza nights, that what do you want to do and what do you think you'll do?
I love that.
So that you can check if they're applying to the best courses.
I love that. I'm going to use that. That's really good. Yeah.
Help them get to where they want to be and not where they think they're going to end up being.
Well, look, Salma, do you have has your business got a name yet that you can share?
It's going to be called Bo Layla. It's going to be called Bo Layla.
Bo Layla, spelled?
Bo Layla, which is a combination of the 3 most important groups of women in my life. So it's my daughter's name, my mum's name, and my niece's name all combined together.
How do you spell it?
Bollaila. Bo Layla.
Okay, got it.
But it's not out there yet, so I've got to. It's hopefully.
Yeah. So what? Yeah. So time frame. When do you think this might?
Yeah, I would love to launch this year. That's what we're really aiming for. Yeah.
Amazing. So this has been fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Well, thank you. And it's such a yes. I mean, and again, I just feel like there were parts of this conversation where I go, actually, we could just spend a lot more time there, and maybe there's an opportunity to do this again in some way. And also kind of lovely to see that, like you say, that arc of, your mum came from that kind of deep engagement with caring and that focus on children, and then your dad, and then the social working aspect of it, and big families. They came from big families, and now you're expanding your reach into the impact that you're having on young people. It's just a really beautiful thing. It seems very congruent to me.
That's very nice to hear, because it does sometimes feel chaotic to me.
Well, that's all part of it too, right?
Yeah, totally. Well, it was lovely to have this opportunity to talk about myself.
Yeah, see, 2 hours went fast, right?
Went very fast.